And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather graphics aren't looking too bad here for the next couple of days. For Sunday morning, a lot of VFR here in the interior, some marginal VFR for the North Slope up along the Arctic coast, and then a couple of areas of IFR, small areas here, the Bering Strait and along the Yukon Delta coast to close to Nunivak Island. Big area of VFR for the Bering Sea and most of the Aleutians, with marginal VFR here over the southeast Bering, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, right on into the Gulf of Alaska, but south of the North Gulf Coast. And with a continued southeast flow, at least for the morning hours, you got IFR here socked into western Prince William Sound, the eastern Kenai Peninsula area, but VFR for the southeast coast. And for the afternoon tomorrow, becomes VFR here across all of Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, across the northern Gulf of Alaska. Marginal VFR slips into the southern Panhandle. So marginal VFR, eastern Arctic coast and North Slope area, but pretty good conditions out to the west here. Mostly VFR with just a little bit of marginal VFR way out there toward Amchitka and Kiska Island. And then for the morning hours Monday, Kodiak Island here in the peninsula become VFR, and even into Bristol Bay. Marginal VFR now extending from the Chukchi Sea right across all the Seward Peninsula down to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, back out toward the Pribilofs, or over the Pribilofs, and then down to the central eastern Aleutians there, with pretty good VFR to the west of that. A little bit of marginal there for Shimei and Attu, and that's about it. Then we've got a little IFR here over the eastern interior from the eastern Alaska Range northward there up toward Eagle, and along and just south of the upper Yukon River there. Marginal VFR for the southeast coast. For the afternoon, scattered areas of marginal VFR here for the Panhandle, and otherwise VFR, Gulf of Alaska, southern Alaska. Maybe some marginal VFR along the Alaska Range. Otherwise, much of the interior looking really good right up to the Brooks Range. Patch of IFR for the central Arctic coast. Mostly marginal here from the Alaska Peninsula across the western interior there up to the northwest coast. Back to a pretty good area of VFR, Pribilof Islands here down to Adak and Atka. Then some more IFR with another system creeping into the western Aleutians. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR for the day Sunday. VFR for Adigan, as I mentioned, Adigan and Anatuvik there for the Brooks Range, both VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill looking good, VFR flying for those passes, as well as rainy and windy. Isabel, same forecast, looking really good for all of the Alaska Range, with Mentasta calling for VFR conditions there. Tanita, VFR. Portage starting out lower, IFR possibly becoming marginal VFR, and then probably becoming VFR late in the day. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR the entire day. Freezing levels here, not much to look at, 2,000 feet here over Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and just south of the North Gulf Coast, cutting across Prince of Wales Island, and well south of the Aleutians here, but the surface still all the way up into the northern Bering Sea. And icing, disturbance to the south of the Aleutians here brings a threat of some isolated moderate rime icing into Adak to Amchitka and Kiska Islands. Otherwise, the greatest threat of some icing will be along this band here over the southeast coast, across the Gulf of Alaska, in toward Kodiak Island. And for the jet stream here, we've got westerlies, west-southwest, about 70 knots at 33,000 feet here, just south of that low over the Brooks Range. Otherwise, southeast winds, strongest here into British Columbia, still grazing the southern southeast coast. And then westerlies, westerly jet right across the central and east central Bering Sea, down across the Alaska Peninsula, 105 to 115 knots. And at 9,000 feet, kind of a more disorganized pattern out here. Light northerlies there over the eastern Bering Sea, stronger west-southwest about 55 knots there west of St. Matthew Island, and light for the Aleutians. And we've got easterlies of 40 knots there coming across the Gulf of Alaska down in toward Kodiak Island, 35 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and south to north flow here right into the southeast coast. 3,000 feet. You can see a band of fairly strong winds here, a narrow band up to 55 knots right up into Prince of Wales Island, back into the Gulf of Alaska. North winds 40 to 45 knots here, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and southward. Fairly light in the interior, and then stronger easterlies, those polar easterlies there for the Arctic coast and North Slope, 35 to 40 knots. And out to the west here, nothing significant. The big storm down to the south there, barely on the map, might bring a little bit of a wind condition into the central Aleutians. And then this weakening trough here has about 25 to maybe 30 knot winds associated with that. But it's continuing to weaken as it heads eastward. And for turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence here. Southern Cook Inlet, where the gale force winds are forecast, down across Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and eastern North Gulf Coast, and all of the Panhandle.